It's time for tea time with Tony.
Today I want to talk to you about our attitudes. And our attitude is so important, it matters so much. And if you're like me in the last couple of days and weeks, maybe you've struggled with your attitude depending on the day. And I've had a tendency to grumble and complain, and I've realized that my attitude has not been the way it should be all the time. Our attitude matters so much so, and Paul writes about that in Philippians 2, verse 14. He says, do all things without grumbling or disputing. Do all things without grumbling or disputing. And here's the reason why: that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. This passage reminds us that our attitude really does matter. This is a picture of Nick Vujicic. And can you imagine his struggles? Can you imagine the hardships that he's had to face in his life? I don't know what I would do if I was him. I certainly probably would grumble and complain. And I'm sure that in his life, he's had a lot to overcome in his life. But in the midst of it right now, he seems to have a very positive attitude. And he lives his life trying to encourage other people. And I like this quote that he said once. He says, "If God can use a man without arms and legs to be his hands and feet, then he will certainly use any willing heart." You know, our attitude matters, and I want to encourage you to have a Christ-like attitude today, because it really matters. In Philippians 2, verse 14, it tells us that our attitude affects our character. It affects the kind of person that we're going to end up being in our life. It affects not only that, but our reputation. It affects our testimony in the world. And we know that we represent Christ to our family and to our friends. And how we approach life reflects our relationship with Christ. And also, our attitude matters because we live for God and for His glory, and ultimately want to bring Him praise. So how do we fix our attitudes if we're struggling, if honestly right now we find ourselves complaining? Well, I want to encourage you to do some research. Philippians 2, verse 16 and 18 gives some helpful advice. Take a look at those verses, and we'll talk about that in our next video. But also look back at verse 5 of chapter 2. And Paul reminds us to have the mindset of Christ, to think about Christ, the struggles that he went through, what he gave up to live for others, and have him be our mindset and our focus. So again, our attitude really matters, and we have a choice on what our attitude will be for today. And I love this quote by a pastor. He writes this: "We have a choice every day regarding the attitude we embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how we react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes." So today, keep your focus on Christ and do all things without grumbling and complaining.
It's time for 1024.
You can be an encouragement today by joining us with our Zoom meeting tonight, Thursday night. I'll be sending a link to you about that, and it's a great way for us to see each other's faces and to pray for one another and to lift one another up. And today I'm going to draw another name, and that is Eddie. So go ahead and send Eddie a word of encouragement and give him a verse of scripture, or spend some time praying for him today. And so I encourage you to do that. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you tonight at our Zoom meeting.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true.